Okay, we're now live on YouTube. Magandang umaga po sa mga participants natin here on Zoom and also on YouTube. We are now live with 14 concurrent viewers. So we have a special webinar for today. So maraming salamat po sa mga nag-tune in kahit po weekday ngayon. Today is Wednesday here in the Philippines, 10 a.m. na po, and ayun po, we have scheduled a special edition webinar for FSH Hub ED, and this is about generating student engagement, and we have invited a professor from the Pace University at New York, USA, Professor Elmer-Rico Mojica, to deliver this webinar. And ayun po, we are very thankful to him dahil pinaunlakan niya po yung aming invitation kasi the teachers were clamoring dun po sa mga webinars namin for FSH Hub Ed. The teachers are clamoring for this topic, yung pong generating student engagement. So, ayun po. Magandang umaga po sa mga followers natin sa Filipino Science Hub. I see familiar names dito po sa Zoom and also on YouTube. And yeah, but before we start, we just like to share some usual practices, usual requests for our audience to mute and turn off their video for a while and turn them on later po during the Q&A para hindi po lumaki yung bandwidth natin. Okay? So there will be a Q&A portion where you will be able to ask your questions live to our speaker. And ayun po, please no recording of the session as the yung pong YouTube stream po natin ay parang recording na din po, and you can access it later after the webinar if you missed something. Okay? So certificates of participation is also issued as usual, and we will post the Google form link on the chat box later. Please kindly watch out for that, and ginagawa po namin siya towards the end. No? So wag na po tayong mabigla kung at a certain point lang po natin makikita, and makikita din po natin siya sa YouTube live comments. So kindly watch out for that, and dun po sa video description sa YouTube. Pag kinlik niyo po yung video, click niyo po yung video description, and naka-post din po doon yung link for the certificate issuance. And also kindly subscribe yung po sa mga ngayon lang po na nakasali sa mga webinars namin. Please subscribe to the FSH Hub YouTube and Facebook pages for you to get your certificates. All right. So again, we would like to welcome everyone, reintroduce everyone. Kung mga meron po dito na new followers and new participants to our webinars, we would like to introduce our group and our platform to you. This is the Filipino Science Hub. And to do that, I would like to invite our CEO and founder, Dr. Jeffrey Bungkin.
Ayun, ako magandang umaga. Salamat, JP. Magandang umaga po sa inyong lahat sa Pilipinas. So, para po sa mga bagong audience members po na first time, essentially first time makaka-experience ng web event summit sa FSH Hub. So I would like to formally welcome you to the Filipino Science Hub. So Filipino Science Hub or FSH Hub is a non-profit organization that promotes the culture of STEM education and research among students and teachers in the Philippines. So at the moment po, this is a non-profit/volunteer organization, and it's being run by a team of Filipino scientists and educators. So at the moment po, our community is has amassed a total of about more than 70,000 followers already, from the Philippines and across different countries po, in Asia and in North America as well. And so, ano po ba ang aming trabaho dito sa FSH Hub? So we are working hard to actually help develop a technology and innovation-driven Philippines. And for us to be able to do this, it is very important for us to inculcate the culture of STEM literacy and research among teachers and students in the Philippines. And since we are trying to launch, like a strength or to strengthen the culture of STEM education and research, there are two main components to our launching such culture. So the first of which is by feeding the mind. So kailangan po talagang tulungan natin ang ating mga guro na mas papaayos pa ang kanilang mastery ng STEM courses, and at the same time yung strategies on how to effectively teach STEM subject matters. But then, since culture po ang gusto nating i-develop, what we feed the mind or what the mind knows, the hand should be able to actualize. So dito naman po, ang ginagawa natin is that we've been building a community of Filipino scientists and STEM professionals, and we're bringing them closer to the high school and college sectors para po meron tayong mga inspirational figures na magtuturo sa ating mga guro at mga mag-aaral sa Pilipinas kung paano po ba talaga i-apply ang kanilang mga natututunan sa loob ng silid-aralan to create something of value and that could actually contribute to the Philippines nation building. So yun po yung approach na ginagawa namin. And we do have two main programs under the FSH Hub organization. So the first of which is our FSH Hub educational program. So ang main objective po niyan is to empower our educators. And later on, I will talk about like why we are focusing at the moment on empowering our teachers. So yung second program naman po, which is actually being led by JP Onya, yung ating pong host, is FSH Hub Research University. So through this endeavor, we have actually been rolling out free training courses on the fundamentals of research. So from ideation, experimentation, data treatment, all the way down to scientific communication. At napaka-practical po ng ating approach dyan kasi it's mostly practicing Filipino scientists trained in different areas of STEM and practicing their professions in different parts of the world. Yan po ang nagtutulong-tulong para po talaga maturuan ng practical na approach sa research ang ating mga guro at mag-aaral sa Pilipinas. So for today po, this webinar is actually one of the events under FSH Hub Education. So sabi ko po kanina, we're focusing on teacher empowerment. And why is that? So at the moment, we actually have about 33,000 followers on Facebook, and majority of them are high school and college STEM educators. So if you could imagine, so about 33,000 teachers, mostly early to mid-career teachers po ang part ng ating community. If each of these teachers would teach for about 30 years on average and influencing 30 students per year, you're looking at about 29 to 30 million Filipino students impacted over a span of 30 years. And right around that time, so if only 1% of those students would pursue a career in the sciences, we're looking at the possibility of producing about 300,000 Filipino scientists over a span of 30 years. That should translate to about 1,600 or 1,600 to 1,700 Filipino scientists per million population. At yun po ay more than that number is actually higher than the critical mass needed for the Philippines to become competitive with our Southeast Asian neighboring countries. So yan po ang ating tinatrabaho. So kahit mahirap po kasi talagang malapatan ng direktang tulong ang lahat ng estudyante, but if we empower the teachers, you can just imagine po that the impact of that is essentially endless. So hindi po natin masusukat kung gaano kahalaga itong ang pagtulong natin sa ating mga guro. Okay. So FSH Hub po is essentially present in all imaginable social media spaces po. So over the past 15 months, we have been actively rolling out webinars for teaching and research, tutorials. We've been also generating supplemental materials in the form of modules, as ito po napakahalaga po nito sa panahon ng pandemic that na kailangan natin ng administer ng learnings through distance education. We also have virtual lab campaigns as well as features of Filipino scientists, essentially heroes building po. So Yun. And so with that, I would like to welcome you all to the Filipino Science Hub. Okay. So at this point, JK, diretso ka na. So I
Yep.
would like to introduce our speaker for today. So we prepared essentially an overview of his accomplishments, ano po. But I'm not gonna bore you with me reading all of these career milestones of our featured speaker, because we will introduce you in a very special way. So we will be showing you a video of him receiving a university level teaching award in New York City. So JP, please share the video.
Kindly stop sharing, Doc Jeff.
Okay. All right.
Thank you for the kind introduction. I'm very pleased to be with you today to introduce the Dyson College faculty member who's receiving the Homer and Charles Pace Faculty Award, Associate Professor of Chemistry, Elmer-Rico, Mojica. Dyson College is blessed to have a great many outstanding faculty members who truly dedicate themselves to student success and along the way develop lasting relationships as students graduate and find rewarding careers. Our faculty bring relevant, real-world, experiential learning into the classroom, blending theory with practice that provides the pathway to our students' success. And this award commemorates those revered professors. Since 1998, Professor Mojica has taught general chemistry, analytical chemistry, and instrumental analysis courses. He has incorporated a practice of using popular media in teaching chemistry, dubbed as Kentertainment, which adds excitement to the usually challenging courses he's teaching. At the core of his teaching is his research group, which embodies the PACE motto, Opportunitas. Through their work together, he closely mentors students, giving them opportunities to conduct research, present their results at conferences, and become authors and co-authors in publications. All of the 57 PACE students who have conducted research with him since 2012 have presented in a scientific conference, with some presenting multiple times at the American Chemical Society national meetings. Notably, 19 of them have served as authors or co-authors in 16 peer-reviewed papers. An accomplished scholar, Professor Mojica has won numerous awards, including being the first recipient of the Excellence in Research and Scholarship during Pace's University's Research Day in 2013. He was a recipient of the Yularanguro Award in 2019. Professor Mojica has had quite an impressive career. I wish to thank him for his dedication to our students and to PACE, and extend my sincere congratulations on being recognized with this prestigious award today. Congratulations, Professor Mojica.
I would like to thank Dean Trustman for that kind introduction. With me receiving this award, I feel like Sidney Poitier's character in the movie To Serve with Love. I'm honored to be the Homer and Charles Pace Faculty Awardee for this year, and together with the other distinguished personalities in this year's batch, it's really an honor for me here. I'm grateful also for the alumni who nominated me for this award. I would say I'm humbled with this award because they say that I serve as a role model, inspiration, and go beyond and above, when in fact I'm just doing my job. Okay? A job wherein, as the principal told the title character in Mr. Holland's opus, a teacher has two jobs: fill the young with knowledge and gives those minds a compass so that knowledge doesn't go to waste. I'm just fulfilling the motto of Pace University, which is Opportunitas. And I'm thankful for the Department of Chemistry and Physical Sciences, the Dyson College, and the Pace University for all the support that they gave me to teach and mentor this student. To paraphrase a quote from the classic 1939 or 1938 movie, "You can't take with you." As near as I can see, the only thing you can take with you is the love of your students. I'm thankful to all my students who I always says, have an open mind when you take my course because everybody hates chemistry. Okay. And the way I told them is do what the letter in the course said. Chem is try. Or else if you do it your way, okay, the letter may rearrange, and by the end of the semester, you may ask yourself, Christ, why me? Okay. I'm thankful also for the undergraduate research that the students did with me. To the 60 students, so the dean says 57, but I have recruited 3 more. I'm thankful for them for giving me the opportunity to have an adventure. Okay, I would like to name a special mention: Max, Kevin, Lexi, Jahaira, Joe, and the other people that I felt to mention. Okay, and thank you for living to the motto of our group. I always tell them less stress, more success. Okay, and I always emphasize to them I can only be successful if they are successful. I'm also grateful to my family who are with me today, because for me to go way and beyond, okay, I have to sacrifice some of my time, family time, because I have to accompany some of my students in conferences in other cities, and also to the time that I have to go home late because I have to spend the time with my students in the lab. We're still doing experiments that they need for the presentation. And to my colleagues in the teaching profession, I share this award with you, especially during the time of the pandemic when we are tested. And as usual, we delivered. I always believe that to teach is to touch the lives of our students forever. Thank you very much and have a great day.
All right. So everyone, it is our honor and pleasure to introduce to you Dr. Elmer-Rico Mojica. Kuya Meng, take it away.
Thank you very much for that introduction. I just was informed that they will introduce me using that video during the time that we log in here at Zoom. So here I am again. This is, I think, the 4th time that I have with Phil Sci Hub, but the first time this year. Usually, I think a month ago, I asked Jeff if they're looking for some topic, and they said, yes, kuya, kung pwede, engagement. So I will try my best to say something about this student engagement, and hopefully you will learn something out of this what we call webinar. So I just try to be sharing my experience in the way I handled the pandemic. Okay, so it's already, I would say, what, the 4th semester coming this fall. And we are excited during summer that we will be going in person, but the Delta variant came in, and until now, we still don't know. So everyone is just, we could say, abangan ng kasunod na kabanata. So the title of my talk this morning is Generating Student Engagement, Teachers' Catalyst for Successful Teaching During the New Normal. Okay, so what we're going to do, I'm going to ask some survey question para naman ma-practice natin kung ano yung pinipreach natin. Okay? So the topic or the outline of my topic for today, we could say we talk about engagement. Okay? COVID-19, the digital divide, that's the 5 A's of digital divide. That's really a very big problem there in the Philippines. And then we could look at the reasons why students are not engaging. Okay. And then sabi nga nila, to solve a problem, you have to know what are the factors that affect the problem. And the last part is the experience that I have. Okay. From the several institutions that I have taught since the pandemic. Okay. So I don't know how nerd you are, but there's a Star Trek series that's what we call, this is, I think, Star Trek, the Next Generation. So there's always one line that Captain Jean-Luc Picard that says, okay?
Let's see what. Engage. I've lost contact, sir. What? Engage. Engage. Engage.
Okay, so those are those are the words that usually he muttered when they're going on what we call an adventure. Okay, and usually they said if you're going to interact with another person, you have the word what we call engage. And then we could say if you got married, sometimes you have to be engaged first. Okay, so the thing that we're going to tackle about this is the so-called student engagement. Okay, so I have this Calvin and Hobbes strip from the 1990s. So there's a teacher that's asked there, you have a question, Calvin? Yes. What assurance do I have that this education is adequately preparing me for the 21st century? Am I getting the skills I need to effectively compete in a top global economy? I want a high-paying job. When I get out of here, I want opportunity. And then the teacher answered, in that case, young man, I suggest you start working harder. What you get out of school depends on what you put into it. And then Calvin said, oh, then forget it. So this is an example wherein we could say student engagement happened. Okay? Because when you go to school, it's not like a grocery where you pay and they will give you something in return. When you go to school, okay, you are asked to learn something and then you are tested if you learn that skills. Okay, so we could say student engagement, it's just the amount of time and energy students put forward positively linked with the desired outcomes of undergraduate education. Okay, so this is from an article, How College Affects Students. Okay, so maybe I can shoot here the first question, although all of the questions that we have, all the 4 questions is just one. We'll just answer them one by one. I'm trying to see. So I like your participation because that's the way we do engagement. Okay, so answer only we could say number 1. So is student engagement important?
Are we gonna share the poll or
I'm going to share. We're going to share every question, and then I'm just going to reset. So for this time, we'll just have to answer number 1 because I can just reset it for each slide. Okay. So do you see the question?
Not yet.
Oh.
So this poll quiz is unfortunately limited only for our Zoom participants.
Participants, yes.
Yeah, so
do you see
sorry
the question now?
Okay. Yes.
So dito natin makikita kung kayo ay nag-engage din. Because you want to hear a talk about engagement. Okay, so I want also you to do your part because as a student, as I told you in the introduction, student engagement, okay, takes 2 to tango. It's not only the teacher, but it's also the students. Right now, you're my student. So do you see the question for our audience? Because I don't see any answer. So that means hindi kayo nakikipag-engage. So doon pa lang, bagsak na kayo. Okay, we just need to answer number 1. Okay, the question because the next question that I'm just going to refresh every time I'm going to ask a question. So the question that I want now is number 1. Is student engagement important? Okay, so dito also makita out of the 100 participants, only 10% are engaging. So diyan pa lang bagsak na kayo.
Ayan po, for the benefit of our YouTube participants, our first question in the poll is student engagement important?
Yeah.
Ayun, and so far we have 24% participation. It's ramping up, so yeah.
So maybe I'll give you 20 seconds at least to end the question. I-refresh natin yung next set of questions. Okay?
Yes, sir.
Kasi ginawa lang namin yung what we call questions. Hindi kasi ako yung main host eh. So we have to do it what we call limited time. So at least we could see here the one who participated 100%, 37 participant answered that student engagement is really, we could say, important. Okay, so if I'm going to share the results here, so this is what you see. Okay, so sabi ko nga sa inyo, sa student engagement, hindi lamang yung teacher. Dapat maki-engage din yung estudyante. Okay, so if we go on, before I ask the next question, George Skaw defines student engagements as it represents the time and effort students devote to activities that are empirically linked to desired outcomes of college and what institutions do to induce students to participate in this activity. So usually the meaning and applications of the definition of student engagement have evolved through the time to represent increasingly complex understanding of the relationship between the desired outcomes of college and the amount of time and effort students invest in their studies and other educationally purposed activity. Okay? Sabi nga ni Benjamin Franklin, tell me and I forget, teach me and I remember, involve me and I learn. Okay? And most of the student engagement usually happen in a place that we call classroom. Okay? Now, there are, we could say, 3 types or 3, we could say, categories. So when we're talking about student engagement, it's a multi-dimensional construct, partitioned into 3 categories. So we have behavioral, okay, cognitive, and emotional. Okay, so when we're talking about behavioral engagement, it refers to students' participation in academic or social activities. Okay, interaction with others, participation in learning activities. Now, when we're talking about cognitive engagement, it refers to the students' ability to comprehend new ideas and master intellectually challenging skills. So this includes motivation, persistence, and deep processing of information. Now, the last...
I'm sorry. Kuya, are you sharing slides?
Oh, I should, yeah.
Ay, Kuya, hindi siya
we can't see anything. Yep.
You do see now?
Hindi
Nope,
pa
not
rin po.
yet.
Bakit kaya? Lagi na lang.
Share screen.
Maybe, wait, I'm just going to stop the share and then it always happened me last time. I don't know why. You see now? Hindi pa rin.
Not yet.
Bakit? Ano yung nakikita nyo? Nan?
Bakit hindi siya
I'll stop sharing.
Okay.
It happened to me the last webinar. I really don't know why. Poll result lang daw nakikita. So maybe I can stop sharing that poll. Okay. So do you see now the link? The PowerPoint? Hindi pa rin.
Hindi pa rin po, sir, eh. Pero
Okay.
bakit ganun?
I'm really sorry. It happened to me last time in my webinar. Wala pa rin?
Wala pa rin, Kuya. Is Kuya may co-host?
Yeah.
Yeah, I think I am.
Yeah.
Wait, I tried to do something. Meeting controls. Ito, wala pa rin? Hindi ko alam kung bakit.
Wala pa rin, Kuya.
Bakit kaya? Ano kaya? Mag-logout ako.
Ay, kuya, puno yung Zoom. Baka hindi ka kuya makapasok.
Hindi ako makapasok.
Oo. Box office hit ka, 100. So puno na po yung Zoom.
100 lang ba yung capacity? Okay, wait. What I'm going to do is okay. So screen sharing has stopped. Okay. So I'll try to do it again. Ito, kita nyo, ganito na lang.
Kuya, camera mo lang yung yung nakikita po namin. Is there, kuya, a way for you to share your files with us, and then we can just perhaps like share it from our screen?
Wait. I'm trying to see, baka meron akong napindot dito. So, just wait. Never happened to me. Usually okay naman lagi yung camera ko pa rin nakikita.
Yes, kuya.
Yes.
I think there should be a way na matanggal yung camera ko. I just don't know how. Just wait. I'm really sorry for this technical thing. Pwede nyo tanggalin mo ako yung, paano ba yun? Yung sa camera ba yun? Okay. Baka multiple share na. I'm trying to find. Hindi ko na makita sarili ko eh.
Yeah, kuya, could you try it one more time?
Okay. This one?
Ayun,
Ayan.
okay, now it's working.
Okay, I don't see myself. That's the problem, but it's fine.
Yeah, okay, we can see
Okay.
you clearly, kuya. You're in the right frame naman.
We go back. I told you yung student engagement is a multi-dimensional construct, partition into 3 categories. So meron tayong emotional, behavioral, cognitive, at emotional. So when we're talking about behavioral, okay, it refers to the students' participation in academic or social activities, how they interact with one another. When we say cognitive, okay, it refers to students' ability to comprehend new ideas and master intellectually challenging skills. Now, when we're talking about emotional engagement, it includes emotional reaction, both positive and negative, to peers, instructor, and so. So, yan tatlong aspect na yan yung nag-govern sa what we call engagement. Okay? Now, before we proceed, I'm going to ask you the second and the third question. So, I hope hindi magkaano dito. So, I'm going to relaunch the poll. So, nakikita niyo yung poll?
Yes, sir, Meng.
Okay, so we'll answer 2 and 3. So, ano sa tingin niyo? Was student engagement affected during the pandemic? And of the 3 category, which do you think was greatly affected by the pandemic or shift to remote learning? So time starts now.
Okay, for our Zoom participants, please answer only questions 2 and 3. So we're going by the questions po. Ayan. So the second question was student engagement affected during the pandemic? And the third question is, which category of engagement was greatly affected by the pandemic or shift to remote teaching?
Because
Yan.
I want to try to see your result with some of the slides that I'm going to present later on. So this is an example we could say of
okay.
engagement.
Kahit hindi po siguro nasasubmit kasi nakikita naman namin real time yung mga answers.
Okay.
Yep.
So I will end the poll in 5 seconds, at least for 2 and 3
Yes po.
questions. Okay. And then I would like to share to you just for the 2 and the 3. Okay, so everyone agrees that student engagement was affected during the pandemic. At itong number 3 ang medyo magkaiba yung mga sagot. Okay, so which category of engagement was greatly affected? So I think most of you answer behavioral. Okay, so at least 72% said it's behavioral. I think some of you put multiple answer. Okay, and then the next one is emotional. So I want you to remember this question as we go on in the slide. Okay, because meron akong ipapa-compare sa inyo yung study na ginawa kung gaano ka-affect yung student engagement. So I stop sharing. So you still see the slide?
Yes.
Okay. Now, when COVID-19 came in, alam nyo gaano ka-apektado. Okay, hindi lang yung Pilipinas. It's around the world. Okay? The COVID-19 pandemic interrupted, we could say, 9 out of 10 students worldwide. 191 countries closed all the school, affecting 1.5 billion students from pre-primary to tertiary. Almost half of all students were affected worldwide. They face barriers to the so-called online learning during these school closures. Okay, and if we're going to go at specifics, we could say worldwide 50% of the learners, they don't have computer. That's equivalent to 826 million. Okay, it worse when you go to the third world. In Africa, 89% don't have any computer. Okay, 43% of the learners around the world, they don't have internet. In Africa, it's around 82% of the learners, they don't have internet. 56 million worldwide, they cannot access, okay? They cannot use mobile phones to access the information, okay? And in the Philippines, we could say, after this pandemic, I would just put here my doppelganger when I was in college. Okay, I don't know if you know Dong Abay. Kamukha daw kami noon, pero ngayon hindi na kasi kalbo na siya. So, kumusta na? Okay, how you feel right now? So maybe you can be excited, anxious, happy, fulfilled, satisfied, helpless, or sad. Or pag inilagay natin sa emoticon here, I think 1 or 2 or more than of these emoticons tell you the feeling, okay, with this, we could say, pandemic. Now, even before the pandemic came, there's already a paper, okay, that was produced, or we could say, during the pandemic, ang sabi nga nila, from Charles Dickens' Tales of Two Cities, it was the best of times, it was the worst of time. And I could say, I have the feeling, okay, at the same time, that it was the best of times, it was the worst of time. I think when you say it was the best of time, kung mayaman ka, lalo kang yumaman. It was the worst of time, kung mahirap ka, lalo kang naghirap. Okay? But even before the pandemic hit us, there's already a paper about the digital access in the Philippines. And it's not a binary. So when you say a binary, it's not just a simple yes or no answers. It's more complicated. So in this paper by Roberts and Hernandez, they discuss the 5 A's of technology access in the Philippines. Okay, ano yung 5A na yun? First one is availability. Okay, so connectivity is unevenly distributed. Why? We are an archipelago. So merong mga isla, wala talagang computer. Walang internet access. Okay? Yung iba, meron, pero intermittent. Hindi reliable. Okay? Now, the next A that we could say is, yes, it's available, but the next question is it affordable? Okay? So, maybe it's affordable only to some. And why? Because we have the most, we could say, expensive and unfortunately, the slowest internet in Southeast Asia. Now, if they are available, affordable, the next question that you can ask is, are the people aware? Okay, about this digital governance. The study was to see how people can be connected by digital governance. So when the lack of awareness results to contributes to the level of non-use of certain technologies, rural area usually they has the lowest awareness of the digital governance. Now, kapag available, affordable, at aware ang mga tao, ang next na iano natin is abilities. Who has the digital literacies to use the technology? I don't know if you're going to agree with me. Karamihan sa atin, nag-i-internet lang for social presence, right? Manood sa Facebook or di kaya mag-post something sa TikTok. But there are more than that. Okay? And the last A that we have there, if it's available, affordable, awareness, and people are aware and they have the ability, the next question is agency. Okay? So who has the self-efficacy to make use of the technology? So this is the feeling of unable to engage in digital governance. Okay? So that was a very good paper na inaano natin, yes, meron tayong maybe hindi magandang internet structure, but okay, we can do something out of it. So ito yung mga tanong na inaano nila doon sa tinatawag nating digital device. So what I'm going to do now is some set of poll questions again. Kasi gusto ko lang kasi maano yung feedback. So we can answer here 4 and 5. How can you describe your life during the pandemic? Is it the best of time, the worst of time, or normal time? And can you consider the digital divide or digital equity a big problem in your teaching during the pandemic? So karamihan, worst of time or normal time. Walang best of time.
Yep. So again, our question was, how can you describe your life during the pandemic? Is it the best of time, worst of time, or normal time? And the next question was, is the digital divide or digital equity a big problem in your teaching during the pandemic? Ayun.
Kasi sabi nila kapag walang internet, problemado. But Bill Gates said, technology is just a tool. Okay? In terms of getting the students or kids into working together and motivating them, the most important is the teacher. So hindi porket wala tayong internet, wala tayong technology, hindi na tayo pwedeng makapagturo. Okay? Tanggalin man nila lahat, ang importante pa rin pagdating sa learning ng student is the teacher. Okay? So I'm going to end the poll. So I'm going to share to you the results at least for, we could say, number 4. So as you can see here, out of the 99 participants, only I think 20% are participating. Okay, so it's worst of time for 78% and normal time for 22%. And then for 83%, the digital divide is a big problem, okay, compared to the 17%. Okay, now what happened during this transition to new normal? Okay, so there's an article that I read that there are at least 4 transitions when you shift to the new normal. First is the shift of the learning space. So ano yung shift to the learning space? From public space na kung saan ginagawa lahat sa classroom, okay, going to the personal space. Okay, the schools and universities are closed, so everyone is at home. From the physical environment, you went to virtual interactions. Okay, So there's also a shift in our social interaction from physical naging virtual. Now, another transition that you have to consider during this shift is the shift of delivery. Okay? So when we're talking about the shift of delivery from one size fits all, naging individualized and differential learning. Kasi dati, kung ano yung lecture, okay, sa isang topic, pareho yun sa lahat. But what happened during this time is yung iba nakakasunod, yung iba hindi. So all students will be taught the same. They listen to the same lecture, they do the same activities in class and complete the same homework assignment. And at the end of the semester, all students will sit for the same exam and evaluated based on the same rubric. But when we transition to new normal, medyo iba na yung delivery. Yung iba hindi agad maka-pick up, yung iba nahuhuli, and we're going to talk about what can we do on that thing. Okay? And then there's also a shift of responsibility in the teaching and learning process. So, since yung virtual environment or yung space mo ay yung personal space, there should be a participation of the household members, okay, for you to have a good learning experience. So we could say, hindi lang yung teacher, okay, ang active participants. Dapat yung household members mo, they should become active agents in the teaching and the learning process. Yung nga lang, mahirap, nag-online learning tayo, maya-maya, oy, luto na yung sinaing mo, yung marinig, tapos merong tahol ng aso, okay? I know about that because I experienced that, okay? And then the last shift that we have there is the shift in the learning evaluation. So as much as possible, we want to minimize the summative assessment and focus more on the formative assessment. Okay? So instead na long exams, we go to what we call quizzes. So yan yung, we could say, transition na nangyari during that time. Okay? So let's look at some of the study. I try to look what's the effect of this remote learning doon sa student engagement. So I find a paper here. There's around 70 plus students that they ask some questions regarding how student engagement was affected during this remote learning. Okay? So kasama dito yung tatlo na tinakil nating category of what we call engagement. So in the behavior questions, they ask about the class participation. They ask if they met with the professor, how often, okay, they participate in class before and after the shift to remote learning. Okay, they are asked how often they met with the professor before and after pandemic or the COVID or the shifting to remote learning. And they were asked the question if they met with their classmates before and after the shift to remote learning. And if you're going to look at here, yung main changes na difference na nakita nila is the class participation. It declined. And there's a significant decline. Okay? And for the met with the professor, mas minute nila yung professor more often after they shift to be what we call remote learning. Okay? So pag breakdown natin yung results nila, ito yung scores na makikita natin. Okay? So they met with the professor more often after the shift to the remote learning. Unfortunately, the participation in class and the use of the study group drops, okay, after they shift to what we call remote learning. So we could say that the engagement is really affected during this period. Okay? And then in terms of the cognitive engagement, they look at the self-efficacy and sense of belongingness. Okay? Now, if you're going to look at the question here, there's really no significant change before and after the shift to remote learning. Okay? So if you're going to look at this, self-efficacy, we could say increases a little bit, but the change is not significant. And then in terms of sense of belonging, it dropped a little, but the change is not really significant. Okay, so that is the cognitive one. Now, the last one that they look is the emotional. And I think this is where it suffers. So they were asked questions about the attitude towards science. So this is a biology course, and you could see the difference. Okay, the attitude that they have toward the subject really changed, 9.4 to 3.5. Now the value and the stress, okay, it's not really a significant change, but if we're going to look at this, ito yung talagang may significant change, yung attitude nila toward the course. And I would not blame them because of the nature of the course. It's a STEM course. It's really hard. Okay. But, okay, if you're going to sum up the three categories of what we call student engagement, behavior and cognitive, there's no significant change, but the emotional one was the one that was affected. Remember, I asked you in the survey. And if you look at the answer of you in the survey, it, I think, matched the attitude of the students that we have here. Okay, and that is enough. If you're going to look at the overall effect on the student engagement, that emotional engagement, the difference that they have there in the attitude towards the course is enough to give an overall effect on the total student engagement during the transition, okay, to remote learning. Okay, so we could say student engagement was really affected during this pandemic. Okay, so the next question that I will ask you, this is similar to the next set of slides that I have. So this is, I think, the last set of questions that I have here. So how is the student motivation during the pandemic? Is it higher, lower, or no change? And how is the student morale during the pandemic? Is it higher, lower, or no change? So we're talking about motivation and the morale. I just want engagement, at least in this webinar that we have. Okay? Practice what you preach. Yun yung laging sinasabi ko sa mga estudyante ko.
Actually, Kuya, may napaka-active ng participation ng mga nasa YouTube. So, nag-answer sila sa...
Kahit wala sila ng ano.
Oo. mas marami ka, Kuya, respondent sa YouTube. Mas marami silang sagot.
Because what I'm doing here is I'm also doing during my class. Especially when we hold synchronous session. Okay? Because that's the only way for you to engage them. Okay? So let's end the poll and let's see. So if I'm going to share the results here. So how is student motivation during the pandemic? 82% said it's lower. 18% said it's higher. And then how is the student morale? 82% says it's lower. 14% said it's higher. Okay, so I'm going to share to you what education
Yeah, and I think in YouTube the response is quite similar. They are saying that it's both lower for both morale and motivation.
So here's a study by Edwig, okay, for some students during the pandemic. So student reporting their what we call motivation as they're less motivated, at least half of the student. And then 1/4 of them said they're more motivated, and 1/4 said there's no change. Now, from the teacher's perspective, okay, they found out that 87% of the students are at least less motivated. Okay, and then if you're going to look at the morale, the student will say around 50% also, similar to what we call the motivation. And with the teacher's view is around 82%. So at least hindi tayo nagkakalayo doon sa answer nyo. Okay? Now, you may ask the question, so how do we make them engage? So maybe the first thing that we can ask ourselves is, why do you think they're not engaging? Okay. Before you solve the what we call, what do you need to do? Maybe the first thing for you to ask is, why do they have this behavior? So what are the 5 reasons that students are not engaging? So I'm going to share to you what Amanda Morin tells about the reason, because they said, okay, if you are a student who are genuinely engaged, okay, you persevere despite the challenges. Okay? If you are an engaged student, usually you're attentive and curious kahit ano pang mangyari. Okay? Now, one of the reasons that they said they don't engage is the students' life circumstances have changed. So we are in the what we call pandemic. Some are affected also economically. Here in the US, there's what we call recession during that time. And also there's what we call social unrest, that so-called Black Lives Matter. Okay? So the students' life may have changed drastically since the day the school shut down. Okay? So many families are grappling with financial worries, illness, loss, homelessness, and or food insecurity. So, minsan, tanong mo sa sarili mo, ano bang uunahin natin? Yung pag-aaral or kung ano yung kakainin natin sa susunod na tanghalian or hapunan. Okay? So, in this case, students may no longer have an internet connection. Pwede mo rin i-take into consideration yan. We also have digital divide here in the US. What more? There in the Philippines. Okay? Yung face-to-face, nasa classroom ka, when you work with your student in person every day, you can get a sense of who may be going through something difficult, okay, at their lives. But mahirap yan sa distance learning. Okay? So, what can you do? Maybe if you have a student whose behavior has changed drastically or significantly, you check with them or maybe ask their family. Tawagan nyo or i-text nyo, is everything okay? Okay? Dito sa US, meron silang tinatawag na social worker. So yung social worker ang mag-take care sa mga problem na ganun. Ang ginawa nila, yung mga walang laptop, binigyan nila, nilaw nila ng iPad. Okay? So that's one of the reasons why students are not engaging. Now, another one is they're dealing with stress and trauma. I have students whose parents pass away because of COVID. Okay? Now, when you have stress and trauma, we could say it can interrupt cognitive processing. It can disrupt your emotional regulation. So all of that makes it difficult to learn, think, and engage meaningfully. Because lahat ng mga tao during the time, the pandemic, there's a lot of anxiety around the coronavirus. Ngayon nga lang, nagsisimula, hindi pa kami sa fall, we're already anxious. What will happen with this variant that we have? Yes, we have the vaccine, okay? But not all of them want to be taken by the people. At least dyan sa Pinas, okay? You don't have the vaccine, but all of you, most of you want to take it. Okay? So, anong pwede mong gawin kapag meron ka ditong problema ng estudyante? Then, you reach out to her or to him. Kung meron siyang emotional problem, okay? I always tell my students, if ever this is just too much of a burden to you, let me know as soon as possible. Hindi ko na siya kukulitin. Okay? But I try to reach out to the students as much as possible. Another thing is maybe the content isn't accessible. Maybe walang internet access yung estudyante. Wala siyang what we call pambayad sa data. Okay? Hindi siya maka-attend ng synchronous class. So you have to make sure that the materials that you post is accessible, or kung ano tinatawag natin dyan, modules. Dapat available, or we could say accessible sa lahat ng mga estudyante. Okay? You can apply maybe some best practices here for online learning. So ako usually I have a video before, and then whatever that we have recorded, ipopost ko pa rin yun so that those students who are not able to attend the class synchronously, they can look at it asynchronously. Okay? The next one is the need for more structure and support. Okay? Iba kasi yung online learning or yung module type. Especially if students got used to the classroom. Okay? So usually yung structure nila doon, pupunta tayo sa classroom, tapos may support sila doon aside from the teacher. Who are the other support that they have? Their classmate. But when you move to this remote learning, swerte mo kung ma-meet mo yung classmate mo. Usually it's your own family members na ma-interact mo. Okay? So we could say during this time, allow them to get used to the new structure that you have. Okay? Usually I gave them maybe 2 or 3 weeks bago sila para masanay sila dun sa structure ng aming klase. Okay? And sad part here, some of the students are also workers. They work. So ang hirap i-juggle yung buhay nila with the structure that we have in remote learning. And this, I think tayo ang may pwedeng gumawa ng paraan nito. Yung expectation natin sa engagement, hindi nagbabago. Classroom-based yan or what we call virtual environment, gusto natin ganito pa rin yung expectation. I think we have to take that into consideration. Yes, we could still set, like we could say, expectations, but at least we have to be, we could say, open. Okay, doon sa problem. But I will tell you about later on yung abuse nung ginagawa ng mga student na, oh, be kind to them because it's the pandemic. Because I really what we call experience that. Okay, students trying to abuse the system or the situation. So how are we going to improve the student engagement? Maybe the way that we could look at this is, ano ba yung factors or principles ng student engagement, especially in a virtual classroom? And then what we can do is, let's look at this and we can adjust with these factors or principles and maybe improve the student engagement. Okay, so teach taught list here at least 9 factors for student engagement in the virtual classroom. Now, the most important here we could say is your lesson design. So lesson design will ideally meet the relative constraint and opportunities given by the learning circumstance. So when we shift to remote learning, the institutions that where I teach, they ask us to undergo training. Okay, and the first thing that I learned about this thing is the so-called lesson design and content. I'm not sure if you're familiar with the so-called backward design. I never learned it when I was a teacher before pandemic, but after pandemic, I think that's one of the aspects that I learned. Ano ba yung tinatawag na backward design? Parang ang summary ko lang dun sa backward design. Ano bang gusto mo matutunan ng estudyante dun sa lesson na binibigay mo? Okay? So possibly the single most fundamental part of teaching is to understand what it is to be taught, what is the lesson objective, and how to teach it. Okay? Yung student engagement kasi sa virtual classroom, during remote teaching and learning depends heavily upon the design of the learning objective. So siguro hindi mo magagamit kung ano yung ginagawa mo normally sa classroom. So that's the first thing that you need to consider. Okay? At yung sabi ko nga sa inyo, ang punot dilo to, ano ba ang gusto mo matutunan ng estudyante? So gagawa ka ng some sort of backward design. Okay? So ako, ito lang gusto kong matutunan. I'm teaching chemistry and I would say yung isa, instrumental chemistry, sabi ko, paano nila malalaman yung principles or use ng instrument online? Okay, that's the hard part that I have. But I did try my best to pero some works to some students it works, to other students it didn't work. Okay, so ang idea dito is simply that the lesson design should meet the relative constraints and opportunities given by the learning circumstance. Okay, so that's one, and I could say the most important factor that you need to consider. And it's more complicated if you're teaching more complicated courses like the sciences. Okay, and then the next one, motivation and the psychology. Okay, so you have to think that different people do the same thing for different reasons, and students are no different. Okay, anong main motivator natin sa students? Everybody will agree with that grades, right? But hindi pa pwedeng motivation natin sa kanila na, at least may natutunan kayong bago. Okay? Because the way I teach chemistry is I told them not to go after the grades because they're going to be disappointed. The way I ask them is, have an open mind that you learn something and the grades will come after. Yan yung parang motivation na binibigay ko sa mga estudyante. Kasi sabi ko, if you want to aim an A, huwag ka kumuha na klasiko because hindi ka makakakuha ng A. You'll be disappointed at kung ano sabihin mo, comment doon sa rate my professor. But if your approach is to learn something, the grades will be easier. Okay? So yan yung ginagawa ko, at least nadala ko doon sa, we could say, virtual environment. Okay? So not every student will be motivated by the same thing. Student engagement is generally thought of in terms of cognitive engagement. But if you're going to look at cognitive engagement, involved dyan yung motivation. So some students may be motivated kung nandoon yung parents nila sa room habang sila, klase at home. Okay? But others will be motivated, as I've told you, by the letter grade. Okay? Ang hilig natin sabihin, pag hindi kayo mag-aral, mababa yung grade nyo. Di ba? Okay? It always, we use that grade as what we call a motivation to them. But you have to think of it. Maybe siguro, sabihin mo, at least may matutunan kayo. Okay? And then you have to look at the roles and the perspective. So maybe you can use the roles as a design element in lesson and unit design. Because kung tinuturo nyo a history, so sabihin nyo sa student, maging historian kayo. Anong nangyari nung na-discover ni Magellan yung Pilipinas? Okay? 500 years ago. Or if you what we call a scientist, so ano ngayon yung role mo? Yung na-discover, let's say, yung law of conservation of mass ni Antoine Lavoisier. Okay? So the ideas of roles in a classroom is usually taught in terms of a teacher role and student role. And that's a good place to start. But helping students assume roles can also improve class climate and group work. Okay? Now, another factors that you need to consider is we could say spaces and climate. So instruct your students to set up their study space in an area with a few distractions as possible. Lucky for you, hindi nyo naririnig yung distraction ko dito every time I have my online class. So I live at 3rd Avenue and from time to time, may wang-wang kayong maririnig. And my students hear that. That's distraction. Okay? Sometimes it affects their space. Kumbaga, personal space na ngayon, nadidistract pa sila. Okay? Pag ang klase ko sa Pilipinas, makakarinig ka ng tahol ng aso, yung kuliglig ba yun? O di kaya yung may nagtitinda or may sumisigaw na kapitbahay. So you have to take that into consideration. Okay? Maaring ma-affect yung engagement ng students ninyo doon sa klase nyo. And then I discussed earlier about this, what we call structure and flexibility. So ako, I always have this what we call structure, and I want my structure to be consistent. So kung every week magmi-meet kami ng ganito, magmi-meet kami ng ganitong time. Kung every week may quiz kami, or we could say discussion, gagawin ko yun. So I'm trying to build up a structure, hindi yung pabago-bago. Kung minsan nalilito yung estudyante. And at the same time, you also have to be flexible because not everybody can follow the structure that you have. Okay? It will be, we could say, if you're starting, it will be a lot of trial and error. Okay? But as you go on, as you build that structure, magiging kampante na yung mga estudyante. And you can be flexible to those students na hindi makakasunod sa iyo. Okay? And even though we are work from home, there's still what we call collaborations and interdependence. Nature sa human yung mag-socialize eh. Okay? At yun yung nawala sa mga estudyante. How they socialize with other students. Okay? So how are you going to overcome here? Maybe you ask for a group work. Maybe you ask them to talk. Usually beginning and after class, I meet them and I ask them anything about the situation outside the class, or may problema ba sila sa lecture, or what we call sa lab. Okay? So you can build team building during this time. And then we have this inclusion and equity. Okay? Mahirap mag-handle ng large group of students. At mahirap i-track sila isa-isa. But as much as possible, okay, you try to be inclusive to all of them. Because ayaw mo sabihin, ang favorite lang niya ito kasi lagi silang nasa group. So from time to time, I ask those students that don't show up in their video or in their Zoom video, so how are you? So sumasagot naman sila. Okay? But the thing is, I cannot do anything lalo na kapag may problema sila sa internet. It's really hard. Okay? Because that also involves interfaces and interaction. So usually, this will only be applicable if you have the LMS. Okay? When we say LMS, pwede yung, I think, Google Meet ba yun? Okay? Or Google Classroom. Because we use here Zoom, we have Blackboard, we have Brightspace. Okay? So we take advantage of that. So ang highest popular, I would say, is the Zoom and the Microsoft team or the Google Classroom. Okay? So I would say you can ask your student to interact not only with you but also with their classmates. Yung iba nga lang, nag-i-interact sila but to make sure that they give a hard time to their instructor. Lalo na pag mahirap yung klase. And last but not the least, we could say is communication. Whatever happened, you have to keep in touch with them. Okay? So those are just the factors. There are other what we call factors, feedback loops. So kung may mga experiments ka, you should give them feedback. Gamification, there's always time for game. So sometimes, kapag after ng class, I want them to relax, we play some sort of a game. Okay, before we start with the class. And then you design the curriculum based on what we call the resources that you have. Okay, kasama dyan yung instructional design. And I always use those data that I got from surveys. So from time to time, that guides me, especially after exam. So I want to see how is the reaction whenever they're given the exam. And the way that they look at is para mag-guide pa kayo is yung tawag kong ICIC. Okay, you inform, you consult, you involve, and then you collaborate. And these are the tools that you can use, okay, among these things. Now, I'm going to share to you what I have. So maybe you know me, it's just a PACE university, but I also teach in your college. And this year, I also teach in UP Los Baños. Kaya alam ko yung sistema nyo dyan sa Pinas. Okay? So the courses I'm teaching, Gen Chem, Analytical, Chemistry, Instrumental Analysis. So your college, the same thing. Okay? So UPLB, I teach College Chemistry and Research in Chemistry. And if I'm going to give to you the schedule that I have during this pandemic, kita nyo dito. By fall, we have an in-person. We do the lab in person, at least at PACE. But if you're going to look at York, I want you to look at one course there. 241, 241, 241, 241, 241. 5 times I taught during the pandemic, and I tell you, the experience is really horrible. To the point that I asked the chair, can you make it in person by fall? Kasi hindi ko na kaya. Parang sukang-suka na ako. At kahit yung mga estudyante, sa feedback pa lang nila, sukang-suka rin sila sa akin. Which I don't experience when it is an in-person. Okay? So parang intimidated sila, okay, doon sa requirements. But I told them, you are in a clinic, because most of the students teaching this course are clinical lab technician. So I need to train you in such a way that when I'm your patient, I'm confident that that I'm going to be in good hands when you service me. Okay, so it's an instrumental lab. Okay, now in UP Los Baños this semester I taught Chem 18 and Chem 230 lab. So the only way we can have synchronous class is what we call during the graduate course, the 230. But the Chem 18, out of the 20 students, by the last day, I think I only have 4 students doing synchronous class with me. Okay? So if we're going to look at the schedule that I have, yung yellow, yung we could say in-person. Okay? So spring, I have the in-person. Okay? So before fall, nagbigay ako ng mga webinar dyan sa Pinas. I always said, I'm doing this because I want to share my experience. Because Oscar Wilde says, experience is the hardest kind of teacher. It gives you the test first and the lesson afterward. Or experience is one thing you can get for nothing. But after the spring 2021, I could say we do not learn from experience, but we learn from reflecting on experience. Okay? Because the first thing for you to do is, ano na ba yung role ng teacher during the new normal? Okay? Iyon yung importanteng malaman mo. Kasi kung hindi mo alam kung ano yung role mo, hindi mo rin alam ano yung gagawin mo. Okay? So, I read this article. This was written by a Filipino, that during the new normal, there are 3 key roles of the teachers. Okay? It cultivates the students' motivation. So, why is motivation needed? Kung hindi motivated yung student, walang student engagement. Okay? And for you to what we call go on this one, you also have to take into consideration that you have to play as a team player. Hindi pwede since ako ang teacher, ako lagi ang masusunod. Okay? And for you to, we could say do that, you have to be an innovator of change. Baguhin mo yung role mo na teacher ako, so dapat masumunod kayo dito. I think you have to take into consideration that, because student engagement was really affected by the pandemic. Okay? So ano yung in-adapt kong strategies? So as much as possible, whenever I have new semesters, I ask them to say something about themselves. Why are they taking their course? At ano yung narinig nila about sa course at about sa akin? Now, the question that you may ask, bakit kailangan mong gawin yun? Because what I do is I ask the student to react doon sa post ng isang student. And this student, they don't know. Okay? They just happen to be taking the same course. But that's one way for me to build a community. Good kung good yung feedback na nakuha nila. Pero pag bad, I heard that this course is so hard, and I heard that the professor is not is really intimidating. Yari ka dun, which happens to me. Okay, but the main reason why I do that is I want them to have some sense of community. Kasi hindi naman sila nakikita eh. Kapag sa classroom magkita kayo, merong connection. At least by saying something or posting something in a discussion forum, there's some connections that they can build. Okay. And usually I ask them to engage during synchronous meetings. Students like it before our class. So usually I have a class at 12:05. 11:55 I go in. Tapos ang gagawin ko, mag-aano ako ng instrumental sound, movie themes. Okay? So they got the mood. kung ano yung mangyayari sa class. I remember when I played, I don't know if you know the Godfather team. One student says, "Are we in trouble?" And I just said, "No, I'm just preparing you for the exam next meeting." Or I think one time when they're going to have an exam, after the meeting that we have, I played, I don't know if you're watching the Game of Thrones, the Reign of Customers. So now you know what, it was played during the massacre scene. So they already says, what does this mean? Oh, you have to prepare for your exam. And then when Alex Trebek died, I also played the Jeopardy team. So I'm trying to what we call build the thing. And once I showed that I saw some of the faces, I said, so how's life so far? So I try to socialize with them before we do our formal class. Okay. And then I always tell them, this is what I expect. And I always ask them to follow class rules. So I ask them to raise their hands or just mute themselves during the time. Because one thing that I hate to do was I have to mute the students who keep on talking during class. I did that. I have to do that. I don't feel good when I did that. But I always tell them, rules are rules. There's still etiquette that we need to follow. Okay? And I also tell them the expectations. Okay, that for you to get this, you have to have this score. Okay, and since not all of them, especially the classes that I have in UPLB, can attend synchronously, I posted our class at my YouTube page so that those who are not able to attend can watch it, because some students, they can only engage at their own time. Hindi nila ma-pick up agad kung ano yung lesson. So it might take them time. So the way to do that is post whatever class that you have recorded, video that you have recorded in your class, so that they can learn at their own pace. That's another student engagement. And then you have to maintain consistent communication and feedback. Laging kailangan yan. Okay? Whenever you see, some of them is absent, so sunod-sunod email yan. To the point na ako na umaayaw. At yung time na student naman, I'm sorry, but I have reached the time. But I already always tell them at the beginning that I'm going to bug you until you reply. Now, during the time that I don't bug you anymore, make sure not to bug me also. Kasi yun yung ano natin hindi tayo pwedeng maging mabait, because it can affect you mentally. You have to set a limit. Kasi yun yung tanong sa akin last year, yung nagwe-webinar kayo, hanggang saan yung bait nyo, sir? Sabi ko noon, kung makakaya, gawin mo. Pero dumating sa time na, bakit ko ginagawa to? Kung wala silang pakialam, wala rin akong pakialam. Because it will affect you mentally also. So you have to set a limit and make sure alam yun ng student. I always tell them at the beginning. I always put them in the syllabus. Okay? So parang kung ayaw mo, diwag. It may be brutal, but I have to do that kasi yung ano naman, yung sarili ko yung maapektuhan. Okay? So the results that I have, I could say, masasummarize natin dito. The good, the bad, and the ugly. Okay? And this is, I think, from the experience that I have from the three institutions. Ayaw ko sabihin, ito yung institution na to, we'd say it's a mix. Okay? So, ang sabi ko nga, the good, the bad, and the ugly. Okay? Based on the photos that I have here. Okay, so the good thing that come out is if the student buy into the system, you can maintain the student engagement. Okay? So usually, nakita ko yan kapag mayroon kaming proctoring software. Wala silang angal. Nasa syllabus, the university has the proctor software, utilize it. Wala kang iniisip kung mag-cheat sila. Okay? And the rotation in person, we could say, the face-to-face, it helps us to improve this, what we call student engagement. And I would say my teaching is much better now than it was before the pandemic. Kasi alam ko lang doon yung classroom-based. Now, I said, if we go back to in-person, I can now, we could say, add more weapon or tool for my students by using this, what we call videos that we use during the pandemic. Okay? And the thing that I put there is, I want the student, if we're going to adopt this policy, we have one thinking. I'm not sure if you're familiar with the song Isang Bangka. Okay? Because the way I do it, it's not only in my teaching, but also in research. Okay? Because we always tell them, we're trying to build a sense of community. Pagkat kasama mo ako, isang bangka tayo, ano man ang meeting at makakamtan natin. So I always says, our goal is for you to learn. Okay? And it's up to you if you're with me or not. Whatever they happen, okay, even we have COVID-19, we need to put that thing. And the students who buy into the system, okay, understand it, and they have a good engagement and experience, believing to the system that I gave to them. Okay, so the good that comes in when you have an LMS, easier exam, and proctoring, it eliminates the cheating anxiety. I don't know, teachers would always have the feeling, ayokong student na makakascore sila na mataas kasi nag-cheat sila. And students will find ways to get grades without doing anything. And the best way to do is what? They cheat. But if you have an LMS, there's no leakage of exam question. Okay? The rotation in person class improves student-teacher relationship and student engagement. So what we have, 25%. So the room capacity is 24, so we can accommodate 6 students, okay, in each meeting, and then they rotate, okay, and then share the data with one another. So you're a better teacher after the pandemic since you have new tools that you learn, and you're able to successfully transition from physical to virtual environment in engaging your students. That's the good thing, okay? Now, what's the bad? When you have digital inequity, bad na yun. Okay? Why? Because you cannot have personal interaction. And I always have the notion that students are not serious when it is online teaching. Para bang confidence sila, online teaching yan. Okay? Madali lang yan. But I think for me, it's more hard, or it's harder, more difficult. And if you grade an essay type question, it's so taxing. Yung nag-grade ko na lab report, I can do in 30 minutes with 10 to 15 students here. It takes me what? 2 to 4 hours. Kasi type ka ng feedback, basahin mo. Ako pa naman yung type ng person na nagbabasa. Kasi yung iba, magsasalong ng praise, sometimes lyrics ng kanta. So pag nakita ko yun, hey, I don't think this belongs here. So at least makikita nila, nagbabasa ako. And I think they hate me for that. But I have to do that. That's my job. Okay? Most of the students, they just want what? A high grades without doing anything. So the bad thing that I told you, not all has equal access to internet. And I felt helpless to students with connectivity issues. Another bad thing, the Zoom fatigue. Parang mas pagod pa ako sa Zoom class kaysa doon sa face-to-face. And another bad thing, whatever questions that you have, it's available online. Pero may ginagawa akong paraan. Yung not true, ginagawa akong true, or yung false, gagawin kong true. Or yung which of the following statements are true. So A, B, C. So what do? I jumble them, and then I ask for feedback. Most of the common feedback that I said, I expect to have a high grade. I wonder why my score is low. And you could see, if they followed, if they not pay attention, na binago ko yun, yung original answer nila, yung answer nila ay dun sa original question. Okay? Digital grading is a little bit worse than manual grading. So minsan nahirapan ako ibalik agad yung mga lab reports, and this can lead to bad engagement. Now there's still an ugly thing. Some students trying to game the situation or taking advantage. Oh, pandemic tayo, bigyan nyo na lang kami ng A. Well, I'm not that kind of teacher. Okay? And unfortunately, it gives stress and anxiety to me. I have one student in one university, she told me that, I put the answer, but it says it's blank. Pero alam ko naman na wala siyang sagot eh. Because I can monitor in the access log anong nangyari. Sabi ko, it's a problem-solving answer and you just spent what? 1 minute? I don't think you have an answer. So pinabigyan ko nung una, Pero yung ginawa niya, sabi ko hindi. Kasi noong unang exam, he said, I don't have internet line. So gumawa ako ng bagong set ng exam. And I told him, ask the school for the pocket Wi-Fi. Second exam, sinabi niya, nagsagot ako ng answer. Pero blank. Okay? Sakit na naman ang ulo ko. Sabi ko, sige, pagbibigyan ko. Pero next time, wala. Tapos umangal siya, pupunta ako sa Florida at this day during ng final exam. Tapos sabi ko, teka, a-attend ka ng funeral, April 25, pupunta ka doon ng May 10. Ang tagal naman ng lamay noon. It's really stressful to tell you frankly. Kaya nung nakakuha ng students ng D, hindi ko na pinago. Sabi ko, manigas ka. Sorry if I'm going to fail. But that's the effect of the stress and the anxiety. Okay? I felt burned out during that time. Because I think, yes, I can be kind, but sometimes, you know, minsan kasi inaabuso na nila. So you have to take care of yourself. Okay? Sabi ko nga yung isang beses na nag-exam, dapat ang klase ko hanggang alas 4, but at 5 o'clock, tinitingnan ko yung access log niya, ba't ganun? Tapos tinawag ko yung chair ko, bakit ganun? Sabi, estudyante ko yan ngayon, feeling niya siya yung pinakamagaling. So naisip ko, may problema yung estudyante. And after that, I have to, what we call, think myself. Okay? And I hate students like that. Pandemic na naman ngayon, gawin nyo na lang A. And if you're going to look at the recorded, I say the F word. Because I'm really stressed out because I said, if you follow the system, I'll take care of you. And problema kasi, feeling nila, kayang-kaya natin gawin yan. But I'm not that kind of what we call teacher. That's why they hate me because I read all the reports, okay? But not knowing that I also take into consideration kung ano yung performance nila. Sabi ko nga sa kanila, as much as possible, whoever get the highest will get A. Pero pag alam ko yung buong estudyante is working against me, kung ano yung grade nyo, bahala kayo. Call me, we could say what we call crude or bad, but it happens. I just want to be human. Okay? Gusto ko lang rin maging ano yung what we call emotion ko. It really, we could say stress and anxiety. That's why I put it, that's the ugly thing that we have. And then some students, they're not attending rotation in person. And then I have one student, the results from our COVID testing is not yet available. And then he did it to me 3 times. The third time he emailed me, I replied, our university is giving 3 tests. So why don't you take it? After I replied that, hindi na siya sumagot. Because alam niya na, alam ko na ginogoyo lang niya ako. Okay? And then I told you the blackboard problem. Okay? We might be a first world country. We also have some first world problem na dapat hindi na maging big issue. But you could see that students are just trying, to have an easy way. But unfortunately, I'm not that kind of teacher. Especially kung higher level of chemistry, I'm a little bit strict. Okay? So I'm with you when you said that there's some psychology, we could say some burnout stage that you have during this time. It's really hard. Especially, alam mo na, nandiyan pa rin yung banta ng COVID. Okay? And there's always what we call the signs of burnout, feelings of energy depletion or exhaustion, increased mental distances or feelings. So dumating na yung time, wala akong pakialam kung pumasa kayo o hindi. Last spring. Okay? It became to be said after, I think, the 3rd exam in one of the courses I'm teaching, parang, wala na akong pakialam kung ano man mag-grade ninyo. Okay? And unfortunately, that leads to professional efficacy. If you experience it, it's normal. Hindi kayo nag-iisa. Okay? And all of them would lead to waste of time, effort, and frustration. Okay? So the realization that I have is, first of all, you have to take care of ourselves. Sabi nga nila, ano bang tawag doon? Buwis buhay mo yung sarili mo, tapos wala naman silang pakialam sa'yo. Okay? And always have a limit. Yun yung natutunan ko. That I always have to have a limit. And if they go there, that's it. Okay? So you have to find time to relax and unwind. That's why after the spring and the summer, okay, if We can get out of New York City. We went out. Okay, because I think I said I'm just so stressed out of not going out of the city since the pandemic. Okay, so that advice that we have, we're not all the same boat. We all the same, we could say, storm. Some are on super yacht, some is just one oar, but we still have our goal to teach our students amidst the storm. Okay, so sabi nga namin, iisang bangka tayo. And I would just like to share this to you. Kung maybe kung meron kayo tissue paper dyan. Because my student, we could say, surprised me with this. Do you see a video?
Hey,
Yes.
you have a conspiracy theory against me. I hope you learn things you might say, oh my God. I know this is not the right way to chemistry, but I hope you learn something. I really want to teach this face to face, but sorry, I can be emotional sometimes, but I'm really sorry that we have to do it this way. So I just like to thank you, everyone.
For a nice sharing.
Thanks for sometimes that I'm not the right foot. Now I mess up my face when we take the picture. But thank you very much for all this.
Even the students are crying.
Joking around sometimes if I'm moody Monday afternoon, but very frankly, as I told my students last time, sorry Kyle, if I always have the but to tell you frankly, it's all what we call part of a job. Just don't take it personally. Just to tell you frankly, whatever I said today, I'm going to forget it when we see each other again. And I'm hoping that we're going to be in person next semester. Because you're not the only one who have a hard time learning stuff. It's all hard for us. And
Are these graduating students, sir?
No,
Sir
these
Meng?
are Gen Chem 2 students. They were
Okay.
with me since Gen Chem 1. So usually I don't see them. Most of the time I talk to Black. And then during our last meeting, they just what we call turn on everything, and then they put that. Okay. So I usually ask
That's so
them,
sweet.
lab class, okay, and then this is my research student class. This is our instrumental class. The way I look at this, I said, siguro nga dun sa speech ko, which was spoiled to you already, I think I got it from McDonald's. To teach is to touch our lives, we could say, to teach is to touch lives forever. I think for me, I already know the role that I have. Siguro sabi ko, noon ayaw ko magturo, napilitan ako magturo kasi wala ako ibang makuhang trabaho during that 1998. And I was living with my dad in Indang, Cavite. So I said, why don't you teach in Kabsu? So I said, siguro, yan na lang. Kasi ang sabi nga whenever I was given a job, as much as possible, I want to enjoy it. And if I enjoy it, I'll give the best to it. Okay. Yep. So we could say that's one of the joys that I have. But if you want to get the bad part, you can look at rate my professor, type my name. There's some institution that will come with, and you will see the bad words that they say about me. But I can tell you, it's all about the pandemic. That's why I said, I want to go back to in person, because that's not me that they said during that time. So I also like, if you want, I'm giving free webinar. Usually you just have to inform me ahead because I'm teaching 3 institutions right now. So kahit yung day ko, since Philippine time, okay, it's already utilized. But if you want in your school or your organization, we can always plan ahead of it. Okay. So the contact info is Mojica or emoji at California at edu. So I hope you learned something. So thank you very much, Jeff, okay, JP, the Filipino Science Hub, and everyone who attended it. I hope you learned something. Okay, marami pong salamat.
Ayun.
Thank you, Sir Meng.
Thank you, sir.
Maraming salamat, Kuya Meng. And I think like one very important thing that I would also like to add is that napaka-touching no nung video po na sinare ni Kuya Meng na like overwhelmed with emotion kasi I could just like imagine Kuya no teaching to essentially like a blank monitor for the rest of the semester, and then like at the end of it realizing that they really appreciate your efforts.
Yeah.
Siguro po, that message resonates very strongly sa ating mga guro na nandito. Actually po, ang ating mga participants ngayon ay puro po mga guro. And I actually have to say that, so puno po tayo sa Zoom, standing room only, and we also have more than 100 participants live. So, yun kay Kuya. So siguro po, we would also like to take this opportunity to thank all of our teachers for what you do. Kasi the past school year po, I don't know
It's
if
been very
anyone,
challenging. Yeah.
yeah, I mean it's very difficult to actually put like to describe the difficulty of last year with like the most fitting set of words. Pero yun po, ang gusto lang din po namin ipakita sa inyo is that there are figures there are outstanding figures like Sir Elmer-Rico Mojica who are going out of their ways to also show support to fellow educators po. So, yan naman po yung gusto talaga naming maihatid sa inyo. And hopefully po, sa dami na din naman po ng ating mga material na available out there, not only from Phil Science Hub, there's a lot of platforms and organizations out there who have come together over the past year to essentially send the message po na hindi po kayo nag-iisa sa laban na ito. And here's hoping po that there's a lot more na marami pong makatulong sa inyo sa susunod na school year. So hopefully po, mas maging padali po ng padali, but not to trivialize the fact that, since nandyan pa rin yung pandemic, there will still be challenges, but then siguro po dadami ang inyong mga kakampi at dadami ang mga material na magagamit po ninyo para sa upcoming school year. So, JP, siguro before tayo pupunta ng Q&A, mag-segue muna tayo dun sa mga events po natin na that are up and coming. So, ito po, mabilisan lang naman.
Are you sharing?
Yeah, I will share it.
Yep.
Okay, so, over the months of July and August po, we have rolled out a number of webinar of web events. So, today po is yung third event natin with Professor Elmer Mojica. So ito po napaka I'm medyo naramdaman ko yung emosyon ni Kuya Meng doon. So I'm hoping po that through like the succeeding series of web events po that's all geared up towards empowering our educators. Sana po masamahan pa rin ninyo kami. So, yung kasunod po natin, this coming Saturday in the Philippines at 10 in the morning, so same time, we will feature Dr. Ana Karen Lacerna from the De La Salle University in Manila. And she'll specifically talk about safety and risk management in the laboratory. So, practicing safe science for good science. So, Ana Karen Lacerna po is also a graduate of UP Los Baños. So, magkakasama po kami doon sa chemistry program. And then she studied at the National University of Singapore. So, she came back home. So, siya po ay umuwi para magsilbi sa ating bansa. And this is the very first Phil Science Hub webinar that she'll be delivering. So, focus po on lab safety, and this is actually a very important topic for all STEM areas po that would require laboratory activity. So samahan po ninyo kami dyan. So if you're interested, punta lang po kayo dun sa website namin, www.philscihub.com. Nandun po yung registration information. And then secondly, para naman po sa ating mga biology teachers dito. So tomorrow and on Friday, we are conducting, or we were rolling out what we call a biology research camp. So this is para po tong workshop. So essentially what we'll do is we will deliver short talks on different research topics that the high school sector can pursue for science investigatory projects. So ang atin pong mga speakers dito ay ang ating mga Phil Science Hub interns. So these are biology majors from the pamantasan ng Lungsod ng Maynila, and they'll talk about research topics in the areas of biochemistry, immunology, ecology, and microbiology. So kung gusto po ninyo, ito po dinesign namin para maging parang high school enrichment activity. So you can bring your students with you po para marami silang ma-pick up ng mga topics. So, yung registration information din po dyan is on our website, so www.philscihub.com, and nasa Facebook page din po namin. So, we're hoping to see you in these upcoming web events po. All right. So, I'll stop sharing, and we can now move on to our Q&A.
Ayan, so we have a lot of messages in Facebook and in YouTube. So very thankful po ang ating mga participants sa YouTube, sila Ma'am Mabel Ocampo. I'm just reading the names I can see now. So may tanong lang, may couple of questions lang po dito si Ma'am Manolita White. How do we build a healthy self-care habit that stick?
I think you have to set yourself a limit, yung healthcare. Okay? Kasi yun yung parang naano ko yung iba parang they taking advantage of the situation, pero naging fair ka naman sa kanila I remember I gave them 20 quizzes and I told them I'm just going to grade the 10 highest. So that means hindi naman additional work for me, additional typing of questions because the system will grade it right away. Pero nagrereklamo pa rin sila sa evaluation. He gave so many quizzes. so sa point ko, sabi ko, I'm going to be kind to them to the point that maybe they cannot abuse or take advantage of the situations before. Kasi hindi na naman lahat sila ang naapektuhan Kahit tayong mga teacher, naapektuhan rin. So, ang ano ko nga doon, bigyan nyo rin ng konsiderasyon yung sarili ninyo. Kasi may umaasa din sa inyo. Okay? Sabi nga nila is it worth it na anuhin mo pa, problemahin mo pa yung mga ganyan? So, noon parang, sige, take into consideration. Pero dumating ako ng time na every week nire-remind ko, hindi ka pumasok. So, to the time na nag-email siya, why the last week? I said, no. You didn't submit any experiment. You've been warned several times. I contacted your lecturer to inform you. I can do anything. I'll give you an app. Kasi parang sa sarili mo na rin yun. Parang you have to respect yourself also.
Siguro ko yun yung pag-set ng boundaries. No?
Yeah.
You know,
you have to set
para hindi tayo prone sa abuse kasi yun nga sabi I think like everyone naman, it's human nature, you know, people will always try to figure out the easiest way to get around things, parang ganoon. So
yun yung nainis ako doon sa isang system, sabi ko open notes na yung exam tapos i-gain mo pa yung system. Okay, yung iba nga sabi ko, duda ko iba yung nag-exam. But since I don't have any evidence, so why worry it to myself, killing myself by worrying? Sabi ko, malalaman ko naman yan Kasi sabi ko nga doon sa isang co-teacher ko, nagrereklamo din siya. Sabi na sa Gen Chem, ang grade niya, D. Pero sa Gen Chem 2, puro 90 yung score niya. Sabi ko, pag nakita naman yung grade niyan, pag nakita nilang A during the time na pandemic, so magtataka din yung nag-aano yan. Kasi meron akong isang estudyante sa Gen Chem 2 ko, siya, line of 90. Tapos kumuha siya ng instrumental ko, C lang siya. But I already suspect that hindi ako doon sa performance niya. So parang na-confirm doon, nag-ano na siya doon sa isang course ko, siguro may kinuha siyang, at sabi ko, pag Gen Chem kasi kahit sino pwede mong para sumagot. Pero kapag higher Chem na, like instrumental, yung material doon lang sa akin. Yung iba nga, binibigay nila yung material doon sa succeeding one. So, meron akong Excel experiment doon, tapos nagtaka sila, why 0? Sabi ko, hindi ko sinabi kung paano. Your work is familiar. The only one that is different is your name. Kasi di ba kapag may Excel, makikita mo kung kailan create yung file. So, create siya nung time na tinuturo ko siya the previous semester. Tapos yung font, everything is the same except yung name. Sabi ko nga, wag na kayong magreklamo kasi pag nagreklamo, iaano kita sa department, EF ka. Kasi sabi ko, I have my own evidence.
Okay.
Yung iba makulit, so sige, na-F sila. Pero ang ano doon, it gives stress sa sana naman ay hindi na gawing big deal. So I get up, sorry for the word, with this BS. Kasi sabi ko sa'yo, 5 times I taught it, by the 5 times I taught it, ang ginawa ko, pinost ko na lang yung mga recording lecture ko. Tapos sabi ko, after that time, we meet and if you have any question.
Ayun. Okay. Siguro, ano po, solicitation lang. Kung meron po tayong audience member sa Zoom na gusto mag-ask ng question live, so feel free to raise your hands po. Kasi actually, JP, parang mostly comments, no? Sa YouTube. Like, appreciation, kuya, ang dami pong nakarelate ng mga teachers sa mga itinuro nyo po. And then, yun nga, actually, naapektuhan din sila dun sa video nyo, kuya, yung MNK. So,
okay lang ho, magalit tayo. Tao lang din po tayo. Okay? I try to be kind to them, but what we call discover about myself, because I think this pandemic really shows you your true form, that I think it's not nice to be nice all the time. You have to set your own limit. Kasi ikaw ang maapektuhan. Sabi ko, bakit ko wino-worry to?
Ayun, kuya. Kuya, ang dami pong kuya nagpapasalamat. So, you know, I think the responses are really quite overwhelming to this webinar. No? Kasi, yun yung kuya sinabi ni JP kanina in the very beginning that we have this teaching webinar series in collaboration with the Foundation for the Upgrading of the Standard of Education. Dun sa very first session po namin, which covered yung topic of, you know, the importance of effective STEM teaching, halos ang haba po ng Q&A, ang lagi pong hinahanap talaga ng mga guro, even school administrators like principals, ay meron yatang schools division supervisor. One, the aspect of STEM teaching that most teachers struggled, you know, the most, like last year, ay yung engagement. Kaya kuya, saktong-sakto, you know, like when sinabi mo, kuya, meron kang free time, yung sabi ko, ito na yung chance. Kasi kuya, I know that you've actually been, you know, coming up with a bunch of different materials. So siguro yung engagement talaga, given the fact that you've taught, you know, quite successfully over the past siguro 2 or 3 semesters already, you know, during the pandemic. Ang dami po talagang matututunan. And, you know, true enough, I think the response like essentially speaks for you know, like how effective this webinar is. So si Ma'am Rosemary Butaran, ma'am, feel free to unmute yourself po if you have questions.
Yes. Good morning, sir. Good morning. Hi. I would just like to ask our speaker regarding the synchronous session, because I think engagement is most effective during the synchronous instead of the chat board, asynchronous. But the problem is sometimes we are limited by the number of sessions or the length of sessions we can have with our students, because one concern is how much time they are in front of the computer because they have more than one subject. So one concern that was brought about is the exposure of the students in front of the computer for the entire day or for half a day without breaks. So that's one problem that we're having with engagement, is that teachers have limited time, because the option is that you just give the materials if they have any questions and then let the students study on their own.
This is what I observe when we are not going to make it synchronous. I told you, I'm experimenting during that time. Sabi ko nga, yung summer, when I decided I'm going to post all the lecture videos, what I found out is they're not reading it. They're not watching it. Okay, so sa synchronous naman, I always set some limit. So when I see that the student don't engage, minsan makikita mo yan dun sa waterfall section ng chat box which unfortunately for me can be sometimes distracting. Okay, so usually ang ginagawa ko, parang every 30 minutes, saka ko lang tinitingnan yun kung may question sila. And then I always tell them, if you didn't able to pick it up, ipopost ko yung record ng aming class. Okay? All of them are available in YouTube. Kasi ang nangyayari kasi kapag hindi ko post, in our what we call system, it will only last for 2 weeks. Then by that time, wala na silang access. So what I do is I download the video and then post it. Because the thing is, we cannot put them for a long time in a synchronous class. So it's up to you as a teacher to devise a way. So the way I try to do it in chemistry, summer session na magle-lecture ako, and then there will come a time we have a breakout session. Okay, hindi na recorded yun. Mag-aano sila ng mga problem doon. And I ask one of the students to lead the session. So magja-jump lang ako from one what we call group to another group. Okay? And I try to induce, I don't know, I try to induce humor usually. Yung nga sabi nila, yung nag-shift sa remote learning, oh, we miss the humor by Dr. Mojica when we shift, kasi mahirap na mag-joke sa ano eh. Alam mo, iba, nagla-log in pero wala doon. I always test them, okay, let's go. And you could see 4 to 5 students still there and said, hey, get out. Hindi pa rin nagla-log out. So parang nag-log in lang sila and then they're doing something else. So it's up to you because if you're given the time, ikaw yung magdi-devise ng way. But my experience with UPLB, since it's my first time, so I just tackle the synchronous time if ever they have question. But the problem is they won't ask question unless the students is really the interesting type. I mean, he or she wants to learn something. So what I'm trying to do now is maybe record a session well ahead, post it, just like what I'm doing in my school here in the US. Ang pagkakaiba lang, may Tagalog part yung Philippine lecture session. And then I'll ask them to watch it. It's just like flipping the classroom, okay? And what we do is we utilize the synchronous time for question and answer or clarification. But the problem is, hindi ka, don't be 100% sure that they're going to do their part. Okay, so this is the thing is, we want to involve this so-called active learning na yung estudyante yung mag-participate on their own, but we are used to this passive learning kind of teaching. Okay, so it's up to the student if he do her part, because I usually tell them, I always tell the students, all I can do is to make sure to prepare you for this course. Now it's up to you to do your part.
Okay.
Thank you very
much. Siguro one last question po. Meron po bang gusto mag-ask ng question live?
Anyone here on Zoom? Kindly raise your hands lang po if you want to ask a question. I have already posted the link for the certificate. So ayun, at nagpulasan na yung mga tao, pero yeah. I mean the most engaged ones I at least are still here.
Yeah, kuya,
also on YouTube. Ayun po.
Kaya you've got 80% ng Zoom ang nagstay. You know, like, after no sharing ng Zoom link. So you've got like 80% engagement. Sa YouTube hindi bumababa. So ayun. So like overall your retention, kuya, is about like 90%, which I think, you know, magandang resulta yan for an engagement related webinar. So siguro if wala na pong live question.
May last question dito si Ma'am Alma Politano. If we have an instrument about the assessment of student engagement, ano ba yung mga metrics dito?
Well, for me, whenever we have the Zoom session or Blackboard session, nandun yung attendance nila. Okay? And when I include it with what we call survey, so usually kung sino yung nagpa-participate, sila din yung nag-end up na mataas yung grade. So you could see the students that
directly are proportional
during the class, sila din yung magaganda yung grade. And usually they're not the problematic students.
Yeah. At ito talaga, sir, yung mga estudyante na hindi sila after sa grades. Yeah. Doon talaga sa learning talaga, no?
Yeah. I always put it at the beginning of the semester that I always tell them, because I know some students, I want to get an A, but I always tell them, if you want just an A grade without learning, get out of my class because you're going to curse me, you're going to say bad words about me, you're going to blame everything why you don't get A on me. Because I always tell them that find an open mind, make yourself your mind open your mind, and at least learn something during the class, because I can always assure them that they're going to learn something, okay, during the class. Maybe not related doon sa what we call, sabi ko nga, ang mahirap sa inyo, minsan yung naalala nyo yung joke, hindi yung lesson. And it's sad because if you take the course again, I'm going to give the same joke and maybe you're not going to laugh at it anymore. Yun yung usually ang main ano ko sa mga estudyante. And I always said, you know, the course is just the name, the letters in the name, chemistry, because you want to do it your way, we rearrange the letters there, and at the end, maybe if you're a Christian, you may ask yourself, Christ, why me?
Ayun, may last question na lang ako kay Sir Meng kasi 'di ba pinakita niya yung video na yon na parang very emotional yung mga students, and he talked about yung pong building a strong community, and I think I also saw a question here on YouTube dun sa pagbi-build ng strong community. How do you do just that, sir? And how were you able to affect your students at a very like personal level?
I think what happened, because most of those, I think, yung may pakana doon ay yung mga estudyante ko na nung Gen Chem 1. And in Gen Chem 1, I think they saw how concerned I am, because there were some instances that sabi ko, bakit ang baba ng grade nyo? I think the second exam, sabi ko, lahat naman ng questions diniscuss natin. So I told them, okay, usually I gave them the online web learning. So nag-aano sila ng assignment. So for 2 weeks, and I told them, let's have a break. Don't do anything on that weekend, anything about chemistry. So parang nakita nila na concerned din ako doon sa well-being nila. Kasi yun yung parang dumating na yung time na kahit anong gawin nila, parang hindi sila natututo. That's why I told the university, member ako ng student committee, why did you remove the spring break? Kasi merong spring break eh. Kasi sabi ko, you should at least implement that like a wellness break.
Yeah.
Kasi ang takot nila, pag spring break, baka pumunta sa Florida, tapos pagbalik, dala-dala yung COVID. Pero sabi ko, no, the students deserve to have a break. Kasi sabi ko, kung tayo, maano dito, yung naapektuhan tayo, what more the student? Kasi hindi lang naman isa yung klase nila eh. Kaya at least the students understand. So some, I think I have 90 students, I think 1/3 transferred to another section. Because they don't like my policy. Because I said, you learn something, bakit yung sa kabila, madali siya. Sabi ko, di lumipat ka doon. Sabi ko, di sa pre-country. But the one who understand the way I eat, they buy into the system. So they see that consistency. Kasi sabi ko, hindi ako yung tipong mabait, pero at least you have to show me that you're doing your part. Kasi hindi ko naman kayo iiwanan eh. Kasi sabi ko, kahit bagsakin kayo, pero makita kong nagpa-participate kayo, naintindihan ko rin yung kaso nyo. Ang problema, bago pa kayo mag-perform, puro na kayo reklamo.
Yeah.
I don't know. I've been teaching since 1998. So I already see, sabi ko nga sa kanila, if you have any concern, as early as possible, let me know. Kasi ang hirap na yung, at the end, may problema ka pala sa ganun, hindi mo sinabi. At least kung sinabi mo agad, we can do some alternatives. Madali naman kapusap eh. But
siguro Kuya Meng,
they just, I don't know.
Actually, Kuya Meng, gusto ko lang i-highlight yung isa sa mga huli mong sinabi, that yung parang in-encourage mo sila na i-communicate. So siguro sa ating mga guro din, it is really very important for us siguro na to make it known to our students na accessible po tayo if they have questions. So mahalagang bagay po kasi yun. And then siguro Kuya Meng, gusto ko lang i-comment na ang ganda kung paano nag-unfold yung storya, yung sa tanungan ni JP, how did you do that? Parang ang takeaway namin from that is that naging sincere ka lang doon sa concern. Parang hindi siya trinabaho, hindi siya idinisenyo para ma-appreciate ka. So, and I think that's the very essence of it. Yung nakita nilang genuine yung concern mo, then, na-appreciate ka nila. And then, meron kaninang nag-raise ng hand na wala.
Si Miss Ana Lubiano, I don't know if she's still around.
Yeah? Miss Ana Lubiano, would you like to ask your question po?
Annalie Lubiano.
Yeah.
Yes, ma'am. Kindly unmute po.
Hello po, sir.
Good morning po.
Good morning po. Can I ask po na, as you have said kanina, na you were hopeless in terms of those students who really didn't have the connectivity or the connection. So I want to ask if how did you bridge the gap, or how did you get the scores, or of course there would be a chance or a moment that those students wouldn't be able to take the assessment and such. So how did you manage the problem po?
It depends on the school policies. Okay, some school they will give you like a credit or no credit instead of a grade. They just said you got credit for that thing. Okay. Another school, they have a no fail option. So kung hindi ka umattend, bagsak ka, they will just give you a grade of drop. Unfortunately, yung isang school, we have what we call, we need to give a grade unless the student apply for a pass or fail. So the way I told you is, I have this rule. I always tell the student, okay, don't spell out the word assume. Okay? Don't ever assume that kapag hindi ka nagko-communicate sa estudyante mo, don't assume na hindi concerned yung teacher sa iyo. Okay? That's why if you spell out the assume, you will see what I mean. Because if you always assume, if you spell it out, yan yung mangyayari sa iyo. Okay? So I always tell my student, always connect. And if you have what we call, here in the US, kapag wala kang connectivity, the school will provide you some ways. Okay? Kaya nga mas helpless ako doon sa LB. Kapag wala, sabi ko, pag wala ng anong gagawin natin? So sabi namin, wala. Pero at the end, nag-ano naman sila kasi ayaw nilang magkaroon ng bad grade. So sabi ko, o sige, incomplete ka na lang namin. Tapos pag ready ka na, sabihin mo lang, bibigay namin sa yung exam kung ano yung grade mo, yun na yung grade. We can extend that. Pero sabi ko nga, huwag kang mag-assume. Okay? Because when you assume something, the result may be not good to you. So it's much better kung makipag-communicate ka. Sabi ko nga sa kanila, hindi kami pwede mag-Facebook live stream. Pero sabi ko sa kanila, that doesn't what we could stop you from messaging me in Facebook. Pwede naman tayong mag-message kahit hindi friends eh. Some students do that. Because I told them, how will I know what's happening to you kung hindi mo sasabihin? Ayaw ko mag-assume. Kasi kapag nag-assume ako, parang worry lang yun sa akin. Sabi ko, mapupunta nga buhok ko, baka mawala pa yung buhok ko. So, I always tell, you have to be clear. Sabi ko nga doon sa you have to set a guidelines. And kung hindi man nila makita, at least may message kanila na ganun. Kasi ang rin sa akin, in the end, I need to show proof because pwede kasi makasuhan that I did my part.
Yeah.
Okay? So in the end, kung umangal man siya, it's because
at least by proof.
She did her part. Kasi ako, pag nag-email ako, kinikip ko yun. Okay? Para in the end, sabi, wala raw. Sabi ko, hindi, ito, ang daming email dyan na sinabi, in-email kita ng ganito, in-email kita ng ganito. Wala akong response. So anong gagawin ko? Hindi ko naman pwedeng ma-assume. Sabi daw, nagka-COVID siya. Sabi ko, pwede naman i-message mo lang ako na I have a situation at this time. So sabi ko, tao lang din naman ako na maaawa din sa condition mo. But if you don't do that, how will I know?
How will yan?
That's why don't assume.
Ayun, sir, I would just like to engage one more question from YouTube. Kasi going into the new school year sa Pilipinas po, ay majority pa rin po ng mga schools ay modular mode pa rin po ng education, modular pa rin. And the people were asking kung paano ma-uphold yung engagement kung modular yung setup.
Sabi ko nga
Ayan.
you have to use the greatest motivator. Ano ba yung greatest motivator sa student? Grade.
Grade.
Sabi ko nga sa kanila, I'm not your grade father. Okay?
Mhm.
Because sabi nila, baka pwedeng bigyan. So, no. We have to follow the rubrics. We have to follow the standing. I cannot be your grade father. And I think I have a slide that I always show to them by the end. Na kung gusto mo ng ganun, di ganun. But I always tell them that I always give you a chance kasi pina-follow ko rin yung chemistry. Sabi ko naman, I know exam is not the best basis, but if you really understand, at least you have to prove because unfortunately, that's the only basis that we have.
And siguro Kuya Meng, you mentioned the greatest motivator, no? Ito kakapasok lang na question. Siguro i-tie up na natin, no? So, si Ma'am Luisita Marzan, she asked, what reward mechanism is best to use to recognize performing students during online classes?
Yun nga sabi ko sa inyo,
Yun pa rin yun.
Nagbigay ako ng maraming quizzes, 20, and I just graded the 10 highest. Even before pandemic or during pandemic, at least before pandemic, I just give 15 and I get the 10 highest. But during what we call pandemic, I make it sometimes more than 20. Anyway, automatic naman yung grade eh. ang mahirap lang dun yung pag-input. But once they answer it, the grade goes right away to the grade sheet. So I said, kahit mag-30 ako, pero reklamo pa rin.
Yeah.
We have so many quiz. He gave so many quiz. Hindi nila alam na yung quizzes question na yun din yung itatanong ko.
Yeah. So essentially, they focused on the amount of effort they have to exert, but they don't see the silver lining, no, na, yung makakataas ka ng grade kasi parang ang essence the more entries you send, the more chances of getting a higher grade, no? So, okay, that's very interesting.
Kung naka-perfect ka ng 10, edi kahit hindi ka na kumuha.
A+ na siya. Ayun.
But I always tell them that, who knows, the question there might be coming out in the exam. So yung iba talagang and it shows. Talagang, I think, 15% yung quizzes, about 40% of them gets a grade of 95 and above. They took advantage of that thing. Pero yung iba mga nagrereklamo. Pag binasa mo yung rate my professor, sasabihin mo, ang sama-sama ako.
Ayun.
Yeah.
JP, baka pwede tayo maka-request ng photo opportunity with the rest of the participants para meron tayong Yun po, baka po pwede kayong magbukas ng video nyo.
Gallery view ko po.
Comfortable. Yan. Doon po sa mga comfortable. Para po meron tayong remembrance with Professor Mojica. Ayun.
Only if you will allow.
Only if you're engaged. Diba?
Yeah.
Only if you are engaged. So, makikibukas po if you're engaged. If not, alam na po namin yon. So,
kaya may survey tayo, di ba?
Yan.
Okay. I'll take 3 shots. Ayan. The evaluation link, I will post it here.
Yeah, Sir Mike, si Ma'am Gemma, meron siyang pinapakitang picture po.
Ayan. So, I'll take the first batch. Okay. We just keep on smiling, okay?
Yeah.
1, 2, 3. Okay, that's the first. Second. 1, 2, 3.
Ayun.
Wait. Last one. 1, 2, 3. Okay.
Ayun. So,
ayun.
Kuya Meng, maraming salamat po.
And in behalf of the Filipino Science Hub and all of us here, yung pong lahat ng participants, we would like to share this certificate of appreciation. We would like to, because we're medyo sanay na si Sir na maka-receive ng award, and to Sir Elmer-Rico Mojica of Pace University at New York City, USA, for delivering this webinar, Generating Student Engagement, organized by the Filipino Science Hub and held by a Zoom and YouTube Live on this 11th day of August 2021. Signed, Dr. Jeffrey Bunkin and myself, JP Onya. So, Sir Meng, maraming salamat kasi talagang yung itong mga webinars na isisingit mo pa talaga, no? Tatlong university
teaching.
tuturuan mo, grabe.
Kuya, do you even sleep?
Wala, break ako ngayon.
Oo, naka-break.
Ayan po.
Pero sir, talagang importante ngayon kasi talagang going to the new school year, naghahanap ulit yung mga teachers ng makakapitan na ano ba yung makakatulong sa kanila. Yeah.
Tools and guidance as well.
May natutunan din kayo, yung mga participants.
Yeah. They surely did.
Ayun.
Judging from the comments.
Opo, and kami po overwhelmed din po kami kasi nakikita din po namin na ito po middle of the week, 'di ba? Wednesday in the Philippines.
Exactly.
So maraming salamat po sa inyo kasi for the longest time matagal na po kami hindi nagagawa ng midweek activities. But then, nakikita pa rin po namin yung engagement ng mga tao. So, lalo na po ng mga guro. So, actually, watch out lang po kasi kami sa PhilSci Hub, essentially yung kalendaryo po ninyo every Saturday mapupuno po yan hanggang siguro first quarter of next year. Marami na po kaming naka-line up, hindi pa lang po namin a-announce. So, maraming salamat po sa pagtutok at sa pagkapit. Sana po ay hindi po kayo magsawa kasi kami po hindi nagsasawa. Kuya May, and then sana po, hindi sana kasi hindi ko to ina-assume.
Open ka lang, di ba? Sabi ko, may open time.
Alam ko naman si Kuya May po is pabalik-balik yan. And that's actually what we admire the most about, successful figures like him. It's the successful figures who are also the most generous when it comes to sharing the things that they learn and their expertise.
Because I'm also a product of the public school from elementary to even
PhD. Opo, ayun po. So, kami po nagpapasalamat sa inyong lahat, Kuya Meng, and then sa lahat po ng ating mga nakakasama linggo-linggo kasi talaga naman pong kami po nila JP, ginaganahan po kami sa aming ginagawa kasi nakikita po namin na for more than 1 year now since we actually, since the rebirth of the platform, talaga naman pong overwhelmed kami kasi kitang-kita namin na ang ating mga guro are hungry for new learnings. Talaga po nakikita namin yung intention ninyo to get better at what you do. And that for us is more than enough. Yun po. JP, are there things that,
ayun. So, na-post ko na po yung link for I hope you found the link for the certificate issuance. Nandito po sa chat box sa Zoom and also on YouTube. Nasa video description din po. So, I hope you all found that. And maraming salamat po sa lahat ng participants natin sa Zoom and also on YouTube. So, ayan, ang dami ko ng hearts na nakikita. So, ayan.
Oo. Kuya Meng, maraming salamat po.
Kaulitin.
Kaulitin talaga.
Talaga. Kaya it's past 12 there. So, hopefully po makapahinga kayo right after this.
Hindi ako ibig sabihin talagang busy ako.
Busy ako. And yun nga po, by the way, yun nga po. Sir Meng, Kuya, and on behalf of PhilSci Hub, congratulations on your most recent award. So,
yes.
Thank you.
Kaya po, sobrang proud kami ipakita yung video na yun. Kasi yun po, it's a Filipino educator, leading the pack in a foreign university po. Foreign to the Philippines. Ayun po. So, maraming salamat po sa inyo. And
kita po tayo bukas actually. Doon po sa research camp if you have signed up for that. And
actually, araw-araw hanggang Sabado po meron
hanggang
po
Sabado. Ayun.
Ayun po. Maraming salamat po uli. Take care everyone.
Thank you and
maraming salamat po.
Anytime, Jeff and JP.
Salamat
all right.
po. Ayun.
Thank you everyone.